Star Wars 7x7 episode 2033. Today is a Jedi Business episode. We're going to talk about the 6th weekend at the box office for the Rise of Skywalker, and this is also going to be the last of the weekly updates on the Rise of Skywalker's box office. Punch it! Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7x7. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. So here we are, 6 weekends through, and The Rise of Skywalker on Saturday crossed the 500 million mark at the domestic box office in its 37th day of release. It is only the 15th movie in history to do that, and thus, by a strange coincidence, it's also now the 15th highest earner at the domestic box office all time. Right now it does seem like Beauty and the Beast, which is in 14th place, is within reach. It's 504 million, so yeah, that should be a piece of cake. And yeah, how far it moves up the list? Well, shucks. Nobody knows at this point, but it should move up a couple of slots, both domestically and internationally. In fact, Rogue One is, as far as Star Wars movies go, the next one up the ladder from it. And it's kind of iffy as to whether it will get to the 530 odd million for the domestic, but as far as the global gross, well, that right now, The Rise of Skywalker is only 10 million short of that amount. So it seems like it will easily climb past Rogue One for their overall numbers. To get a little more precise, Rise of Skywalker is at 1,046 million. Rogue One overall was 1,056 million. And Rise of Skywalker is now at 501 million domestic. So, yeah, that's good. At least this weekend, it made some 5 million-ish or so. It was good for 7th place in the total box office. And the theater count has dropped again. So for this weekend, it was in 2,800 theaters. That's down from 3,000 or close to 3,100, somewhere in there. 2,800 for sure this past weekend. And that's what it should stay at until the following weekend, where it's bound to go down again and again and again and again in a slow march toward home video releases. So this is going to be the last of the weekly updates. And the reason why is because now we're just getting, small numbers. 5 million, I know it's not a small number, but, when compared to a billion, certainly, yeah, that's not worth doing a weekly episode about anymore. So we'll expand it out. I'm not sure if it's going to be every other week or if it's going to be once a month at this point, but the thing of it is that if this goes on the way that other December Star Wars release movies went on, The Rise of Skywalker is going to be in theaters until at least April. And I know that might come as a shock, but it's true. The Force Awakens was actually in theaters the last day, according to the numbers, that they have a box office total for them, was April 14th of 2016. So yeah, it was in theaters for quite a while. And that was actually the one that was earliest out of the 3 December release movies previous to The Rise of Skywalker. So we'll surprise you with the totals for the rest of them a little bit later on. And looking back at the 3 December releases previous, well, The Force Awakens was definitely an outlier. In the last 2.5 months that it was in theaters, it made an additional $50 million. It's 50 million. So it made it from 885 to 935. Rogue One and Last Jedi were much more in tune with each other. The Last Jedi made another 10 million in its last 2.5 months. Rogue One made a little bit more, 15 million, but there may be an exceptional circumstance for that. But one thing I can say for sure is that now that The Rise of Skywalker is in only 2,800 theaters, that number is only going to go down with each successive week that goes by. And so if you are hoping to see it another time or two, well, I wouldn't hesitate too long, because when the number of theaters goes down, that means that it will be showing in a theater further and further away from you, and it's going to be more difficult to find. So just something to keep in mind. But anyway, that business about, some weird stuff with the numbers for the other December releases, well, I'm going to share that with you after the break, and that break is coming up right now. Stay tuned. Hey Rebel Rouser, I've made some changes to the asteroid belt level at patreon.com/SW7X7, and they are all with sponsors in mind. So if you want to get the word out about your business, your product, your service to a dedicated Star Wars audience, then please check out patreon.com/SW7X7 and look for the asteroid belt level for details. Again, that's patreon.com/SW7X7. Welcome back. So, in looking at the time that the movies stayed in theaters, I was shocked to find out that of the 3 previous December releases, the one that was in theaters for the longest was not The Force Awakens, and it was not The Last Jedi either. It was Rogue One. Rogue One was in theaters for 140 days, and the last day that it had a recorded box office total was on Star Wars Day, May the 4th, 2017. And that may be a contributing factor to why Rogue One made a bit more money in its final stretch, because it was actually in theaters for 34 more days than The Last Jedi was. The Last Jedi was only in theaters for 106 days. The Force Awakens, by contrast, was in theaters for 119 days. So, yeah, The Last Jedi didn't have as much time to make, that last chunk of money necessarily, and I don't know why that's the case. I'm sure that there are people who have some ideas about it, but for our purposes, I think, it still made $620 million, which is more than what Rogue One made at the box office, so, I don't know if we need to debate this too much, but anyway, Rogue One, 140 days. I don't know if The Rise of Skywalker is going to beat that record, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. And believe me, I will. But not on a weekly basis at this point. We're going to move on to other topics, but we will still check in on the box office. For now, though, that's going to do it for this episode of the show. Thank you so much for joining me for it, as always. And may the Force be with you, wherever in the world you may be.
Star Wars 7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2020 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.